How to force yourself to quit procrastinating, and the complete guide to breaking free from delay and taking command of your life. Introduction. The silent saboteur that controls your life. You know the feeling, that moment when you sit down to tackle something important, something that could change your life, and instead you find yourself scrolling mindlessly through your phone. Hours pass, the task remains untouched. The guilt builds. The cycle repeats. Procrastination isn't just about poor time management or laziness. It's deeper than that. It's a sophisticated psychological trap that hijacks your brain's reward system and keeps you trapped in a loop of delay, regret, and missed opportunities. It's the silent saboteur that whispers sweet lies about tomorrow while stealing your today. But here's what most people don't understand. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It's not moral weakness. It's your brain trying to protect you from discomfort, using mechanisms that were once vital for survival, but now hold you back from the life you want to create. Procrastination isn't just a bad habit. It's a clash between two parts of the brain, the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. When you understand this battle happening inside your skull, when you realize that your struggle isn't personal but neurological, everything changes. You stop beating yourself up and start strategically rewiring your responses. Research defines procrastination as the voluntary delay of an intended course of action, despite expecting to be worse off for the delay. And that last part is crucial. You know you're hurting yourself, but you do it anyway. That's not weakness. That's your ancient brain trying to keep you safe from the discomfort of effort, criticism, or failure. In this comprehensive guide, we're going to dismantle procrastination piece by piece. You'll discover the hidden neurological triggers that make delay feel better than action. You'll learn to recognize the subtle emotional patterns that lead to avoidance before they take hold. And most importantly, you'll master practical, research-backed strategies that force action even when motivation fails. This isn't about motivation. This isn't about inspiration. This is about creating systems so powerful that action becomes inevitable, regardless of how you feel in the moment. The path ahead is divided into 4 essential parts. First, we'll explore the neuroscience of procrastination, understanding exactly what happens in your brain when you delay. Second, we'll identify and dismantle the psychological triggers that feed the procrastination cycle. Third, we'll build an environment and mindset that makes action easier than avoidance. Finally, we'll implement systematic approaches that maintain momentum and prevent relapse. By the time you finish this guide, procrastination will no longer be your master. You'll have the tools, the understanding, and the systems to act decisively, consistently, and powerfully. Not because you feel like it, but because you've trained yourself to move forward regardless of feelings. The person who takes action when they don't feel like it is unstoppable. That person can be you. Let's begin. Part 1. The Neuroscience of Procrastination. Understanding your brain's hidden battle. Chapter 1. The ancient war inside your head. Every time you procrastinate, a war is being fought inside your brain. It's not a fair fight. On one side, you have the prefrontal cortex, rational, thoughtful, concerned with long-term goals. On the other side, you have the limbic system, emotional, impulsive, and designed to keep you alive in the moment. The limbic system, also called the paleo-mammalian brain, is one of the oldest and most dominant portions of the brain. Its processes are mostly automatic. When you feel that familiar urge to flee from an important task, that's your limbic system talking. It's screaming danger, even when the only threat is the temporary discomfort of focused effort. Your prefrontal cortex, meanwhile, is trying to remind you of deadlines, goals, and consequences. But it's fighting an uphill battle. The prefrontal cortex is newer, less developed, and as a result somewhat weaker portion of the brain. It's like sending a thoughtful negotiator to debate with a fire alarm. This isn't your fault. This is evolution. Your ancestors who hesitated before running toward a rustling bush survived longer than those who charged ahead. Your brain learned that immediate comfort is safer than uncertain effort. The problem is, in our modern world, most of the rustling bushes are just opportunities in disguise. When faced with an unpleasant or challenging task, the limbic system seeks to avoid discomfort. The role of the amygdala, a key structure within the limbic system, processes emotions like fear and anxiety. When a task triggers overwhelming feelings, the amygdala activates, steering you toward immediate relief, such as scrolling social media or binge-watching a series. Think about the last time you procrastinated. You probably felt a subtle but real sense of anxiety or resistance when you thought about the task. Your amygdala registered that discomfort as a threat and immediately began scanning for escape routes. Your phone, conveniently within reach, offered an instant pathway to relief. But here's the fascinating part. The discomfort you were avoiding was largely imaginary. Research shows that we literally feel pain when facing an uncomfortable task, and then procrastinate in order to relieve that pain. The tragedy is that once we actually do get started with a task, the pain goes away almost instantly, and amazing things start happening. The task itself isn't painful. The anticipation of the task is. Your brain creates a story about how difficult, boring, or overwhelming the work will be. And that story triggers real neurochemical responses. You feel genuine discomfort from something that exists only in your imagination. Understanding this changes everything. When you recognize that the resistance you feel is not based on reality but on your brain's prehistoric programming, you can begin to work with it rather than against it. You're not weak for feeling that resistance. You're human. But you can be strategic about how you respond. Chapter 2. The dopamine trap that keeps you stuck. Your brain runs on dopamine. It's the neurochemical that drives motivation, signals reward, and determines what captures your attention. Understanding how dopamine works is crucial to understanding why procrastination feels so compelling and how to break free from its grip. Dopamine and instant gratification. The brain's reward system often fuels procrastination. Engaging in a more enjoyable, immediate activity releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical, reinforcing the habit of avoiding the challenging task. But dopamine isn't actually about pleasure. It's about anticipation. It spikes highest not when you receive a reward, but when you expect one. This is why checking your phone feels so compelling, even when nothing interesting happens. Most of the time, your brain is gambling, hoping for that next hit of connection, entertainment, or validation. Instant gratification trains us to value now over later. It's built into every app, every swipe, every shortcut. And while some conveniences are harmless, the cumulative effect is that our attention spans shrink and our tolerance for effort declines. Every notification, every social media scroll, every quick distraction is training your brain to prefer immediate, effortless rewards over delayed, effortful ones. You're literally conditioning yourself to procrastinate. Each time you choose the quick reward, hello, cute cat videos, you strengthen this immediate gratification pathway. Meanwhile, the neural pathways for delayed gratification, like finishing that project or learning a new skill, become less traveled and harder to activate. This is why willpower alone doesn't work. You're not fighting against a lack of motivation. You're fighting against a reward system that has been hijacked by the modern environment. Your brain has learned to expect immediate payoffs, making the delayed rewards of meaningful work feel impossibly distant. But understanding this gives you power. When you recognize that your craving for distraction isn't personal weakness but neurochemical programming, you can begin to reprogram it. You can design your environment to make distraction harder and meaningful work more immediately rewarding. Checking social media or watching videos provides instant dopamine hits with minimal effort, making these activities neurochemically irresistible when compared to more demanding tasks that offer delayed rewards. The solution isn't to eliminate dopamine. That's impossible. The solution is to redirect it. Instead of getting your hits from passive consumption, you can train your brain to get excited about active creation. Instead of seeking rewards that leave you empty, you can pursue rewards that build momentum. This requires strategy, not strength. It requires understanding how your neurochemistry works and designing your life around it rather than fighting against it. Chapter 3. Why your brain lies to you about tomorrow. One of procrastination's most seductive lies is the promise of tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll feel more motivated. Tomorrow the task will be easier. Tomorrow you'll have more time, energy, and focus. Your brain tells you these stories with such conviction that you believe them, even though experience has proven them false countless times. Procrastination might stem from a cognitive bias, that would make doing a task later compared to now appear as much less effortful, but not much less rewarding. Your brain literally tricks you into believing that future effort will be easier than present effort. This isn't stupidity. This is a sophisticated cognitive bias called temporal discounting. Empirical work suggested that human choices are better accounted for by inconsistent temporal discounting models, using for instance hyperbolic functions, in which the daily discount decreases over time. These models allow for preference reversal, i.e. the inversion of the ranking between options when their outcomes get closer in time. In simple terms, your brain values immediate rewards exponentially more than future rewards. A small pleasure now can outweigh a large benefit later, even when logically you know the later benefit is more valuable. This is why you choose to scroll Instagram instead of working on your important project, even though you know the project will bring greater satisfaction. But the truly insidious part is how your brain handles future discomfort. Time inconsistency is a significant factor causing procrastination. It involves bias towards the present self over the future self. Present bias refers to the tendency to value immediate rewards over long-term rewards, often choosing instant gratification at the expense of future goals. You're not just choosing immediate pleasure over future pleasure, you're also choosing to give future you the burden of dealing with today's avoidance. You're literally betting that your future self will be more capable, more motivated, and more disciplined than your current self. But why would that be true? Tomorrow you will face the same neurochemical challenges you face today. Tomorrow your limbic system will still prefer comfort over effort. Tomorrow your brain will still try to convince you to wait until the day after tomorrow. The only difference is that tomorrow you'll have less time, more pressure, and additional stress from today's delay. When you start to get distracted from an unpleasant task, the limbic system starts a process called immediate mood repair. Doing a more pleasant task provides the brain with a small amount of dopamine. Your brain isn't concerned with future consequences. It only knows that right now you're uncomfortable, and right now distraction can make that discomfort go away. Breaking free from this lie requires a fundamental shift in how you think about time and effort. You must stop believing that future motivation will save you and start acting as if current motivation is all you have. Because it is. The person who acts today with imperfect motivation will accomplish more than the person who waits for perfect conditions that never come. Your brain will always find reasons to delay. Your job is to act anyway. Chapter 4. The Perfectionist Paradox. Perfectionism and procrastination might seem like opposites, but they're actually twisted partners in the dance of delay. The perfectionist procrastinates not despite their high standards, but because of them. When the bar is set impossibly high, starting feels pointless because the result will inevitably fall short. Perfectionism. If it's not perfect, it's not worth starting. This seemingly admirable trait becomes a prison. You delay beginning because you can't guarantee excellence. You avoid finishing because you can't achieve perfection. You remain trapped in the planning phase because actual work produces actual results, and results can be judged. The perfectionist's mind creates an impossible equation. Effort must equal excellence, and since excellence is uncertain, effort becomes dangerous. Better to preserve the possibility of perfection through inaction than to risk revealing imperfection through action. But perfectionism isn't really about quality. It's about control, fear of failure. If I don't try, I can't fail. The perfectionist would rather not play than risk losing. They'd rather not create than risk creating something mediocre. This fear masquerades as high standards, but it's actually a sophisticated form of self-sabotage. By demanding perfection from the first attempt, you guarantee that you'll never attempt at all. You've created a standard so high that your brain recognizes it as impossible and shifts into avoidance mode. The cruel irony is that perfectionism prevents the very excellence it claims to seek. Excellence comes from iteration, from the accumulation of many imperfect attempts. Every master in every field has created mountains of mediocre work on their path to greatness. The perfectionist, unwilling to create anything mediocre, never starts the journey. Research shows that self-compassion, being kind to yourself when you fail, leads to better self-discipline than self-criticism. The perfectionist's harsh inner critic doesn't motivate excellence, it motivates avoidance. When failure is catastrophic, effort becomes too risky to attempt. Breaking free from perfectionist procrastination requires redefining success. Instead of measuring success by the quality of results, measure it by the courage to begin. Instead of demanding perfection from your first attempt, commit to making your 10th attempt better than your first. The perfectionist asks, "What if I'm not good enough?" The person who takes action asks, "How can I get better?" One question leads to paralysis, the other leads to progress. Chapter 5. The emotional underground of procrastination. Beneath every episode of procrastination lies an emotion you don't want to feel: boredom, anxiety, frustration, overwhelm, fear, shame. These feelings drive you away from important tasks and toward the temporary relief of distraction. At its core, procrastination is an emotional regulation issue. We delay tasks not because we are lazy, but because we want to avoid negative emotions like anxiety, frustration, or self-doubt. Most people try to solve procrastination with time management techniques, productivity systems, or motivational strategies. But these approaches miss the real problem. You're not procrastinating because you lack a system. You're procrastinating because you're trying to avoid feeling something. Think about the last time you procrastinated on something important. What emotion were you trying to escape? Was it the anxiety of potential failure, the overwhelm of not knowing where to start, the frustration of tedious details, the fear of judgment from others? Overwhelm. I don't know where to begin. When a task feels too big, too complex, or too uncertain, your brain goes into protection mode. Instead of breaking the task down into manageable pieces, it simply opts out. Distraction feels like a solution, because it makes the overwhelming feeling go away temporarily. But avoidance doesn't solve the underlying emotion. It amplifies it. Every time you procrastinate to avoid feeling overwhelmed, you make the next encounter with the task even more overwhelming. The work doesn't disappear, it accumulates. The deadline doesn't extend, it approaches. The anxiety doesn't diminish, it compounds. Low self-worth. I'm not good enough to finish this. Sometimes procrastination is a form of self-protection. If you believe you're not capable of quality work, starting the task risks proving that belief true. Better to maintain the uncertainty than to face potential confirmation of your inadequacy. This creates a vicious cycle. Procrastination leads to rushed work or missed deadlines, which creates evidence of poor performance, which reinforces the belief that you're not capable, which makes future procrastination more likely. Research shows that mindfulness and self-compassion can help with procrastination. These practices are about overcoming negative emotions. People who can acknowledge their mistakes or other personal failings and then forgive themselves for it are less likely to procrastinate. The solution isn't to eliminate uncomfortable emotions. That's impossible. The solution is to develop a different relationship with those emotions. Instead of seeing anxiety as a signal to retreat, you can learn to see it as a signal that you're approaching something important. Instead of seeing overwhelm as proof that the task is impossible, you can see it as a sign that you need to break the work into smaller pieces. Emotions are information, not instructions. They tell you something about your current state, but they don't have to dictate your next action. You can feel anxious and still move forward. You can feel overwhelmed and still take the next small step. You can feel inadequate and still begin anyway. The person who acts in spite of uncomfortable emotions becomes emotionally stronger with each action. The person who waits for emotions to change before acting remains at their mercy forever. Part 2. Dismantling the psychological triggers that feed procrastination. Chapter 6. The decision fatigue trap. Every day you make approximately 35,000 decisions. From what to wear to what to eat, to which task to tackle first, your brain is constantly choosing between options. This endless stream of choices creates a hidden enemy of action: decision fatigue. Decision fatigue can manifest as procrastination, impulsivity, and difficulty concentrating. When your mental energy is depleted by countless small decisions, you have less capacity for the bigger decisions that drive meaningful action. Your brain, exhausted from choosing, defaults to the path of least resistance. This is why you can spend an entire day making decisions about emails, meals, and minor tasks, only to find yourself too drained to work on your important project. It's not that the project is harder than those other tasks, it's that your decision-making capacity has been depleted. The modern environment accelerates this depletion. Every notification asks you to decide whether to respond. Every social media scroll presents choices about what to read, watch, or engage with. Every app on your phone represents a decision point. You're bleeding mental energy through 1,000 tiny cuts before you even get to your real work. Simplify choices by establishing routines and automating repetitive tasks to conserve mental resources. The most productive people aren't the ones with the most willpower. They're the ones who eliminate the need for willpower by reducing decision. Consider how many successful leaders wear the same outfit every day. They're not lacking creativity, they're preserving decision-making energy for choices that matter. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck. Mark Zuckerberg wears the same grey t-shirt. Barack Obama wore the same blue or grey suit. They understood that every decision about clothing was a decision not available for leadership. You can apply this principle to your own life. Create routines for low-stakes decisions, so you have more capacity for high-stakes ones. Decide in advance what you'll eat for breakfast, what you'll wear to work, and when you'll exercise. These small eliminations create space for bigger choices, but the most important application is in your work. Instead of deciding each day what to work on, create a predetermined sequence. Instead of choosing how to start each task, develop standard procedures. Instead of deliberating about when to begin, establish non-negotiable start times. Implementation intentions support goal intentions by setting out in advance when, where, and how I will achieve this goal. Putting the cue for behavior, putting the paste on my toothbrush into the environment so it serves as a stimulus for my behavior. When you remove the decision about whether to act, you eliminate the opportunity to choose not to act. When you remove the decision about how to act, you eliminate the paralysis of too many options. When you remove the decision about when to act, you eliminate the endless postponement of later. The goal isn't to eliminate all decisions from your life. The goal is to eliminate the decisions that don't matter so you can make better decisions about the things that do. Chapter 7. The multitasking illusion that kills focus. Your brain cannot multitask. This isn't a limitation, it's a design feature. Despite what modern life demands, your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. What feels like multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and this switching comes with a hidden cost that feeds procrastination. Research indicates otherwise. While multitasking is often perceived as a way to enhance efficiency, research indicates otherwise. Every time you switch from one task to another, your brain needs time to refocus. This switching cost is small for simple tasks, but becomes enormous for complex work. Research shows multitasking can lower productivity by up to 40%. Over time, this leaves your brain overstimulated and exhausted. When your attention is fragmented across multiple tasks, none receives your full cognitive capacity. You feel busy without being productive, active without making progress. This creates a perfect storm for procrastination. When you can't focus deeply on any single task, every task feels more difficult than it actually is. Complex work requires sustained attention to build momentum and find flow. When that attention is constantly interrupted, the work feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Your brain interprets this difficulty as evidence that the task is unpleasant or overwhelming, which triggers avoidance behaviors. You're not procrastinating because the work is too hard. You're procrastinating because fragmented attention makes the work feel harder than it is. The modern environment is designed to fragment your attention. Every notification fragments attention. Cutting digital noise resets your nervous system and creates space for focus, creativity, and genuine rest. Each ping, buzz, and alert trains your brain to expect interruption. You develop an addiction to stimulation that makes sustained focus feel uncomfortable. But single tasking is a learnable skill. Like any muscle, your capacity for sustained attention grows stronger with practice. The more you resist the urge to switch tasks, the easier sustained focus becomes. The more you protect your attention from interruption, the deeper your concentration grows. Start small. Choose one task and commit to working on it for just 15 minutes without switching to anything else. No checking email, no looking at your phone, no jumping to another project. Just 15 minutes of single-pointed focus. Notice how your brain rebels against this constraint. It will generate urgent reasons why you need to check something else. It will create compelling arguments for why multitasking is more efficient in this particular case. These are not insights, they're addiction responses. Your brain has been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. When you remove that stimulation, it fights back. But if you persist through the discomfort, something remarkable happens. The quality of your attention deepens. The work becomes easier. Progress accelerates. The person who can focus deeply on one thing at a time accomplishes more in 2 hours than the multitasker accomplishes in 8. This isn't about working harder. It's about working with the way your brain actually functions instead of against it. Chapter 8. The Overwhelm Spiral that prevents starting. Overwhelm is one of procrastination's most effective weapons. When a task feels too big, too complex, or too uncertain, your brain goes into protection mode. Instead of engaging with the challenge, it simply shuts down. But overwhelm isn't caused by the size of the task. It's caused by how you think about the task. Break a long-term project down into specific sub-goals. The brain that sees write a book feels overwhelmed. The brain that sees write 1 page feels capable. The difference isn't in the ultimate goal, but in how that goal is packaged for mental consumption. Your brain can only process a limited amount of complexity at once. When you think about all the steps required to complete a major project, you exceed that capacity. Your brain, unable to hold all the pieces simultaneously, interprets this as evidence that the task is impossible. This is why planning often increases procrastination rather than reducing it. The more thoroughly you map out everything that needs to be done, the more overwhelming the project becomes. You create a detailed picture of all the work ahead, which triggers your brain's threat detection system. The solution isn't to avoid planning entirely, it's to plan differently. Instead of mapping the entire journey, focus only on the next step. Instead of defining all the requirements, define only what you need to begin. Instead of solving all the problems at once, solve only the first problem. Start, and start small. Pick one task that you ranked as high priority, and try to break it into smaller tasks. The key word is smaller, not small. A task doesn't need to be small to be manageable. It needs to be smaller than your current capacity to handle complexity. This is why the just start advice is both right and wrong. It's right that starting is the solution to overwhelm. It's wrong that you can just start without changing how you think about the task. You can't start on reorganize my entire life. You can start on clean off my desk. Breaking tasks down isn't just about making them easier, it's about making them visible. When a project lives in your head as a vague, massive undertaking, it feels impossible because you can't see how to engage with it. When you break it down into specific, concrete actions, it becomes something you can actually do. But there's a deeper principle here. Overwhelm is often a story you tell yourself about what will be required. You imagine all the complications that might arise, all the skills you might need to develop, all the obstacles you might encounter. You solve problems that don't exist yet, and prepare for difficulties that might never occur. Instead of trying to solve every future problem before you begin, commit to solving only the problems that actually arise. Instead of preparing for every possible complication, deal with complications when and if they happen. Most of the things you worry about never occur, and the ones that do are usually easier to handle than you imagined. The person who takes action on incomplete information learns more in 1 day than the person who waits for complete information learns in 1 year. Perfect preparation is another form of procrastination. Chapter 9. The Comparison Trap that steals motivation. One of procrastination's most subtle triggers is comparison. You delay starting your project because someone else's finished work makes your beginning seem inadequate. You avoid sharing your progress because others appear to be so much further ahead. You postpone action because your efforts seem small compared to what you see around you. Social media has weaponized comparison, creating a highlight reel of everyone else's success while you're living your behind-the-scenes reality. Notifications, pop-ups, algorithmically tailored content. These hijack our brain's reward circuitry and make deep focus feel boring by comparison. You see others' polished results and compare them to your messy process, forgetting that every master was once a beginner. This comparison creates a psychological environment where starting feels pointless. If the standard is professional quality and you're at amateur level, why begin at all? If others have already done what you want to do, and done it better, what's the point of your contribution? But comparison is a fundamental misunderstanding of how growth works. You're not competing with others, you're competing with your past self. The only meaningful comparison is between where you are today and where you were yesterday. Progress is personal, not relative. Instead of saying, "I'm lazy," say, "I struggled today, but I can try again tomorrow." When you catch yourself using others' achievements as evidence of your inadequacy, redirect that energy toward your own development. Their success doesn't diminish your potential. It proves that growth is possible. The comparison trap also creates artificial urgency. You feel like you need to catch up to others immediately, which makes the gap feel even more overwhelming. But mastery is measured in years, not months. The expert you admire today has been developing their skills for far longer than you might realize. Instead of comparing your beginning to someone else's middle, compare your current efforts to your past efforts. Are you taking more action now than you were last month? Are you approaching challenges with more skill than you had last year? Are you persisting longer now than you did before? This shifts your focus from impossible standards to achievable growth. You can't control how quickly others develop, but you can control whether you develop at all. You can't guarantee that your first attempt will match someone else's 100th attempt, but you can guarantee that your 100th attempt will be far better than your first. The most successful people aren't those who never felt inadequate compared to others. They're those who acted anyway. They understood that the goal isn't to start at an expert level. It's to start at all. Chapter 10. The Energy Management Myth. Most people try to solve procrastination by managing their time, but time isn't the real resource. Energy. You can have all the time in the world, but if you lack the mental, physical, or emotional energy to engage with meaningful work, that time becomes worthless. Your energy operates on predictable patterns throughout the day. When dopamine levels drop, starting tasks feels impossibly difficult. Most people experience peak mental energy in the morning, declining steadily throughout the day. Yet they often schedule their most important work for later, when their capacity is at its lowest. This creates a setup for procrastination. You plan to work on your important project in the evening, after handling emails, meetings, and small tasks all day. But by evening, your mental energy is depleted. The project that seemed manageable in the morning now feels overwhelming. Your tired brain defaults to distraction and delay. Studies show that chronic procrastinators often experience dopamine dysregulation. Their brains don't release enough dopamine when contemplating important tasks. This means that energy management becomes even more crucial for those who struggle with procrastination. You need to align your most demanding work with your highest energy periods. But energy isn't just about mental capacity. Physical energy affects your ability to concentrate and persist. Emotional energy determines your resilience when facing setbacks. Low serotonin levels can trigger anxiety and negative thinking patterns that make procrastination more likely. The traditional advice to just push through ignores the reality of human physiology. Willpower is not unlimited. It depletes throughout the day and needs to be restored through rest, nutrition, and recovery. Fighting against your natural energy rhythms is like swimming upstream, possible, but unnecessarily exhausting. Instead, work with your energy patterns. Schedule your most important work during your peak energy hours, typically in the morning for most people. Use your declining energy later in the day for less demanding tasks like email, administrative work, and planning. Strategic reward priming. Place a small, healthy treat like a piece of dark chocolate at your workspace, only to be enjoyed after 25 minutes of focused work. This creates a dopamine anticipation loop that overcomes initial resistance. Small rewards can help restore energy and motivation throughout the day. Protect your peak energy like the finite resource it is. Don't waste it on low-value activities. Don't let others claim it with their urgent but unimportant requests. Guard it jealously for the work that matters most. This might require saying no to morning meetings, checking email later in the day, or rearranging your schedule to align with your natural rhythms. These changes feel difficult at first because they go against social expectations, but they're essential for consistent action. The person who manages their energy wisely can accomplish more in 2 focused hours than the person who works distracted for 8 hours. This isn't about working less, it's about working when your capacity is highest. Part 3. Building an environment and mindset for inevitable action. Chapter 11. Designing your environment for success. Your environment is constantly shaping your behavior, usually without you realizing it. The apps on your phone's home screen, the arrangement of your workspace, the notifications you allow. These seemingly small details create a steady stream of micro-decisions that either support action or enable procrastination. A cluttered environment can make it difficult to concentrate, as your brain struggles to filter out unnecessary visual stimuli. When your surroundings are filled with excess items, your mind is pulled in multiple directions, which reduces your ability to focus on the task at hand. Your brain is constantly processing information from your environment, even when you're not consciously aware of it. A messy desk creates low-level cognitive load. Multiple browser tabs open create decision fatigue about what to focus on next. A phone within arm's reach creates anticipation of interruption. Research from UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives and Families found that people living in cluttered homes have higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, particularly women. Elevated cortisol levels over time can lead to chronic stress, sleep disturbances, and even health issues like high blood pressure. This isn't about perfectionism or aesthetics, it's about cognitive load. Every visual distraction, every unfinished task visible in your peripheral vision, every piece of clutter in your workspace is competing for your attention. Your brain, trying to process all these inputs simultaneously, has less capacity available for focused work. The solution is to design your environment intentionally. Remove distractions and place cues for action in sight. Example: put gym clothes by the bed at night to make morning workouts easier. Instead of relying on willpower to resist distraction, remove the sources of distraction entirely. Start with your digital environment. From an overflowing inbox to endless social media notifications, digital clutter can fragment your attention and increase stress levels. Start by unsubscribing from unnecessary emails, deleting apps you no longer use, and organizing your digital files into clear folders. Your phone deserves special attention. By reorganizing your device's interface and removing non-essential apps from your home screen, you create a calmer digital environment. You'll be less likely to mindlessly scroll and more inclined to use your phone for intentional purposes. Every app on your home screen is a temptation. Every notification enabled is an interruption. Every autoplay feature activated is a pathway to distraction. Take control of these by design, not by willpower, in the moment. Create physical spaces that support focused work. This doesn't require an expensive home office. It requires intentional arrangement of whatever space you have. Clear surfaces reduce visual noise. Good lighting reduces eye strain and maintains alertness. Comfortable seating supports extended focus without physical discomfort. Many digital minimalists use Freedom's custom block lists to manage distractions, blocking social media during work or news sites at night. By automating your focus, you align your environment with your priorities, not algorithms. The goal is to create friction for behaviors you want to avoid and remove friction for behaviors you want to encourage. Make it easier to work than to procrastinate. Make it harder to distract yourself than to stay focused. Small changes in environmental design can create large changes in behavior over time. Chapter 12. The Power of Implementation Intentions. One of the most powerful tools for overcoming procrastination is also one of the simplest: implementation intentions. Implementation intentions involve forming if-then rules that can be targeted at specific temptations. These are pre-made decisions about how you'll respond to specific situations, removing the need for willpower in the moment. Implementation intentions mean deciding on 2 things. 1. What specific action we want to take, and 2. Specifically when and where we plan to take it. Researchers have found the best results when subjects formulate these decisions using simple if-then statements. Instead of general intentions like, "I want to exercise more," or "I should work on my project," implementation intentions create specific links between situations and actions. If it's 7 a.m. on weekdays, then I will put on my running shoes and go for a 20-minute run, or if I finish my morning coffee, then I will open my laptop and work on my project for 1 hour. Over more than a decade of research, Goldwitzer and his colleagues have amassed a great deal of evidence to demonstrate that implementation intentions have a medium to large effect. Size on goal achievement. They work because they bypass the moment of decision where procrastination typically strikes. Think about the last time you procrastinated. You probably knew what you should do. But in the moment of choice, your brain came up with reasons to delay. Maybe you weren't in the right mood. Maybe you should do something else first. Maybe you didn't have everything you needed. Implementation intentions eliminate these moment of choice negotiations by deciding in advance. You create a link between the situation or cue and the behavior you want to engage in. Now the situation Sunday after breakfast is directly wired in your brain to the behavior start studying. This isn't just about scheduling, it's about mental automation. When you repeatedly link a specific situation to a specific action, your brain starts to treat that action as automatic. You remove the cognitive load of deciding what to do and when to do it. An added benefit of if-then planning is that it conserves our willpower. Whenever your unconscious mind can take over, detecting cues and directing your behavior without conscious effort, it requires far less willpower. Implementation intentions also help you navigate temptation and obstacles. You can create if-then plans for common procrastination triggers. If I feel the urge to check social media while working, then I will take 3 deep breaths and refocus on my current task. Or, if I feel overwhelmed by the size of my project, then I will write down just the next 3 small steps. The key is specificity. Vague plans like, if I have free time, then I will work on my project, don't work because free time is not a clear trigger. Better plans specify exact situations. If it's Tuesday at 2 p.m. and I'm at my desk, then I will work on my project for 45 minutes. Start by identifying the situations where you most often procrastinate. When do you typically choose distraction over action? What time of day? What location? What emotional state? Once you identify these patterns, you can create implementation intentions that provide alternative responses. Implementation intentions even help 6-year-olds to not procrastinate. If this strategy can work for children, it can certainly work for adults. The difference is that adults often overthink simple solutions, looking for complex strategies when straightforward planning would suffice. Chapter 13. Rewiring your reward system. Your brain learns from repetition. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term benefit, you strengthen the neural pathways that make future procrastination more likely. Breaking free from the dopamine loop requires a willingness to step out of your comfort zone, but you can use this same principle to your advantage by deliberately rewiring your reward system. What is cheap dopamine? Cheap dopamine comes from quick and easy sources. Think of junk food, mindless scrolling, or binge-watching TV shows. These activities give you instant gratification, but leave you wanting more. The problem isn't dopamine itself, it's the source. You can train your brain to get the same neurochemical rewards from productive activities. This requires strategic substitution rather than elimination. Instead of trying to resist all rewards, replace quick hits with earned rewards. Instead of scrolling social media whenever you feel restless, take a short walk outside. Instead of snacking when you need a break, do a brief meditation or stretching routine. Ready to outsmart your brain's reward system? Here's where the magic of small wins comes into play. Think of your brain as a dopamine-seeking champion. When you tackle a big project all at once, your brain sees a mountain to climb, with the reward way off in the distance. But break that project into bite-sized pieces, and suddenly you're creating multiple opportunities for those sweet dopamine hits. The key is creating frequent positive feedback for meaningful work. Instead of only celebrating when you complete major milestones, celebrate small progress. Instead of waiting until you finish an entire project, acknowledge when you finish a single session of focused work. You can create a habit loop that consists of a cue, routine, and reward. Finally, the reward of dopamine encourages you to repeat that behavior from positive reinforcement that strengthens a neural pathway. This might feel artificial at first. Your brain is accustomed to getting rewards from passive activities that require no effort. Teaching it to value effort-based rewards takes time and consistency, but the payoff is enormous. You develop intrinsic motivation for the work itself, rather than depending on external pressure. Track your progress visually. Create visual progress charts. Track progress towards long-term goals using charts or graphs. Visual representation of progress can motivate and provide instant gratification, increasing the likelihood of committing to tasks. Your brain responds powerfully to visual evidence of advancement. A simple chart showing days you've worked on your project can provide the reward signal that motivates continued action. Create micro-rewards for micro-actions. After completing a focused work session, allow yourself a small treat, a good cup of coffee, a few minutes of music, a brief conversation with someone you enjoy. The reward doesn't need to be large, but it needs to be immediate and genuinely enjoyable. By engaging in activities that trigger a release of dopamine, your brain begins to remember the benefits of these activities. This memory influences your subconscious decision-making the next time, guiding you toward healthier choices that serve your long-term goals. Over time, your brain will begin to associate the feeling of progress with pleasure. You'll start to crave the satisfaction of forward movement more than the temporary distraction of avoidance. This is when willpower becomes less necessary. Your reward system is aligned with your goals rather than working against them. Chapter 14. Building anti-procrastination habits. Habits are the foundation of consistent action. When behavior becomes automatic, you eliminate the daily decision of whether to act. As we participate in new activities, we can train the brain to form new neural pathways. Repetition is key to form a habit, but building anti-procrastination habits requires understanding how habits actually work. You can create a habit loop that consists of a cue, routine, and reward. Most people focus only on the routine, the behavior they want to repeat. But the cue and reward are equally important. Without a clear cue, the habit won't trigger consistently. Without a satisfying reward, the habit won't stick. Start by identifying natural cues in your existing routine. Instead of creating entirely new triggers, attach new behaviors to things you already do consistently. If you always drink coffee in the morning, use finishing your coffee as a cue to begin your most important work. If you always check your calendar at the start of the day, use that moment to also review your priority tasks. This may help the most difficult aspect of achieving a task: starting it. The hardest part of any task is the transition from not doing it to doing it. Habits eliminate this transition by making the start automatic. When you don't have to decide whether to begin, you remove the opportunity to choose not to begin. But start small. When a task feels overwhelming, commit to doing it for just 5 minutes. The goal isn't to complete the entire project in your first habit session. It's to establish the pattern of beginning. 5 minutes of daily action builds the neural pathway for starting. Once starting becomes automatic, you can extend the duration. This principle applies to any behavior you want to make habitual. If you want to develop a reading habit, commit to reading just 1 page per day. If you want to develop an exercise habit, commit to putting on your workout clothes. If you want to develop a writing habit, commit to writing just 1 sentence. These minimums might seem inadequate, but they serve a crucial purpose. They eliminate the mental resistance to starting. Your brain can't argue that you don't have time for 1 page, 1 sentence, or putting on workout clothes. The action is so small that procrastination becomes harder than compliance. This could look like making yourself a smoothie after 45 minutes of work, no matter where you are in your task, so you can still grant yourself a dopamine reward. The reward doesn't have to be related to the task itself. It just needs to signal to your brain that the behavior was worth repeating. Consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to take small action every day than large action occasionally. Your brain learns patterns through repetition, not through occasional bursts of effort. A 5-minute daily writing habit creates stronger neural pathways than a 3-hour weekly writing session. Track your habit streaks. Visual representation of progress can motivate and provide instant gratification, increasing the likelihood of committing to tasks. Seeing a chain of successful days creates momentum and makes you reluctant to break the pattern. When you inevitably miss a day, get back on track immediately. Don't let one missed day become a missed week. The strength of a habit lies not in perfect consistency, but in rapid return to the pattern after disruption. Chapter 15. The Art of Strategic Procrastination. Not all procrastination is created equal. While chronic delay is destructive, strategic procrastination can be a powerful tool when used intentionally. Some of the best ideas come from procrastination. When you delay starting a project, your unconscious mind continues processing the problem, often leading to insights and creative solutions. The key is distinguishing between productive delay and avoidance. Strategic procrastination involves deliberately delaying action on one task to focus on a more important task. If you're procrastinating on checking email because you're deeply engaged in creative work, that's strategic. You're choosing to delay lower value activities in service of higher value ones. Productive procrastination occurs when you avoid one task by working on another task that is still beneficial. This can help you make progress even when you're avoiding your primary objective. Instead of feeling guilty about procrastination, you can design it to serve your larger goals. Create a hierarchy of productive activities. When you're avoiding your top priority, have a list of secondary priorities ready. If you can't bring yourself to work on your main project, at least work on something meaningful rather than defaulting to mindless distraction. This approach acknowledges the reality that you won't always feel motivated to work on your most important task. Rather than fighting this reality, you work with it. You create multiple pathways to productivity so that even your avoidance behaviors contribute to your progress. But be honest about what constitutes productive procrastination versus simple avoidance. Reorganizing your entire filing system might feel productive, but if it's delaying important deadlines, it's still destructive procrastination. The activity must genuinely advance your goals, not just feel like work. Strategic procrastination also involves timing. Some tasks genuinely benefit from delay. Decisions that require additional information, creative projects that need incubation time, or responses that should be thoughtful rather than reactive. The key is conscious choice rather than unconscious avoidance. Set deadlines for your procrastination. If you're going to delay a decision, decide exactly how long you'll delay and what additional information you're waiting for. If you're going to let a creative project percolate, define what will trigger you to return to active work. Intentional delay has boundaries, avoidance does not. Use procrastination as information about your priorities. If you consistently procrastinate on certain types of tasks, ask whether those tasks align with your values and goals. Sometimes procrastination is your intuition telling you that you're working on the wrong things. The person who never procrastinates might be working very efficiently on tasks that don't matter. The person who procrastinates strategically ensures that their most important work receives their best attention. Part 4. Systematic Approaches for Sustained Action and Long-Term Success. Chapter 16. The 2-minute Rule and Minimum Effective Dose. The most effective way to overcome the resistance to starting is to make starting so easy that your brain can't justify avoiding it. The 2-minute rule suggests that if a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. This prevents small tasks from piling up and becoming overwhelming. But the principle extends beyond quick tasks. For any project that feels overwhelming, find the 2-minute version. You can't write a book in 2 minutes, but you can open your word processor and write one sentence. You can't organize your entire office in 2 minutes, but you can clear off your desk surface. You can't learn a language in 2 minutes, but you can practice 5 vocabulary words. The goal isn't to complete the entire project in 2 minutes, it's to cross the threshold from not doing to doing. Research shows that we literally feel pain when facing an uncomfortable task, and then procrastinate in order to relieve that pain. The tragedy is that once we actually do get started with a task, the pain goes away almost instantly, and amazing things start happening. This is the power of minimum effective dose, the smallest action that produces a meaningful result. In fitness, this might be one push-up. In writing, this might be one paragraph. In learning, this might be one concept. These minimums feel almost insultingly small, but they serve a crucial psychological function. Your brain's resistance to starting is usually disproportionate to the actual difficulty of the task. The anticipation of effort feels worse than the effort itself. By committing to just 2 minutes or one small action, you eliminate most of the psychological resistance while preserving the momentum-building effect of actually starting. Once you begin, you often discover that continuing feels natural. The hardest part was the transition from inaction to action. not the action itself. This is why just start advice works when combined with a small enough starting point. When a task feels overwhelming, commit to doing it for just 5 minutes. Set a timer and give yourself permission to stop after the time expires. More often than not, you'll find yourself continuing past the timer because the resistance has dissolved. This approach also builds confidence through consistency. Successfully completing small daily actions proves to yourself that you can be trusted to follow through. Each small success increases your belief in your ability to take action, which makes larger actions feel more possible. Create minimum effective doses for all your important projects. What's the smallest daily action that would create progress? What's the least you could do while still moving forward? These minimums become your fallback plan for difficult days when motivation is low. But beware of using minimums as an excuse for low standards. The 2-minute rule is designed to get you started, not to keep you at minimal effort forever. Once the habit of starting is established, gradually increase your standard efforts, while maintaining the minimum as a safety net. Chapter 17, The Pomodoro Technique and Time Boxing. The Pomodoro Technique, created by Francesco Chiarello, involves working in a 25-minute focused interval followed by a 5-minute break. This technique reduces mental fatigue and keeps motivation high. This simple structure addresses several psychological barriers that fuel procrastination. First, it makes work feel finite. When you're facing an overwhelming project with no clear endpoint, your brain interprets this as an indefinite commitment to discomfort. 25 minutes, on the other hand, is a concrete duration that your brain can accept. You're not committing to work until the project is complete. You're committing to work until the timer rings. Second, it provides built-in rewards. The 5-minute break serves as immediate positive reinforcement for sustained effort. Your brain learns that focused work leads to rest and relief, creating a positive association with concentrated effort. Third, it prevents burnout through forced recovery. Mental energy is finite, and attempting to work at high intensity for hours without breaks leads to diminishing returns and increased resistance to work. Regular breaks restore mental capacity and maintain peak performance. But the real power of time boxing goes beyond a specific Pomodoro structure. Any time limit creates urgency and focus. When you know you only have 25 minutes to work on something, you're less likely to waste time on perfectionism or irrelevant details. Scarcity of time creates clarity about what actually matters. Knowing there's a goal can help stave off distraction. The timer serves as an external commitment device that helps you resist the temptation to switch tasks or check distractions. It's easier to tell your brain to wait 25 minutes than to resist temptation indefinitely. Adapt the technique to your needs. Some tasks require longer periods of sustained focus, while others work well with shorter intervals. The key principle is having defined work periods with defined breaks, not the specific 25-minute ratio. For deep work that requires extensive concentration, try 90-minute focus sessions followed by 20-minute breaks. For tasks that feel overwhelming, try 15-minute sessions followed by 5-minute breaks. The goal is to find a rhythm that maintains focus while preventing exhaustion. Use the breaks strategically. Phone-free routines. Start and end your day without screens. Avoid using break time for activities that fragment your attention or provide cheap dopamine hits. Instead, use breaks for physical movement, brief relaxation, or activities that restore mental energy. Time boxing also helps you gather realistic data about how long tasks actually take. Most people dramatically underestimate the time required for complex work, leading to overscheduling and stress. By tracking how many focused time blocks various tasks require, you can make more accurate plans and set more reasonable deadlines. The person who works in focused time blocks accomplishes more in 4 hours than the person who works with constant interruptions for 8 hours. This isn't about working less, it's about working with intention and structure. Chapter 18. Building accountability systems. One of the strongest forces for overcoming procrastination is accountability to others. Telling someone about your goals increases your commitment, whether it's a friend, mentor, or coach. External accountability helps combat procrastination. When you know someone else is tracking your progress, the social pressure often overcomes the internal resistance to action. But accountability systems need to be designed carefully to be effective. Simply telling someone your intentions isn't enough. You need regular check-ins, specific commitments, and real consequences for follow-through or failure. Find an accountability partner who shares similar goals or values commitment to growth. This could be a friend, colleague, family member, or someone you meet through professional networks. The key is finding someone who will ask direct questions and hold you to your commitments without being judgmental about setbacks. Schedule regular check-ins with specific agendas. Weekly meetings work well for most people, frequent enough to maintain momentum, but not so frequent that they become burdensome. In each meeting, review what you committed to accomplish since the last meeting, what you actually accomplished, and what obstacles you encountered. Make your commitments specific and measurable. Instead of saying, "I'll work on my project this week," commit to, "I'll work on my project for 2 hours on Tuesday and Thursday." Specific commitments are harder to rationalize, away, and easier for your accountability partner to verify. Consider financial stakes for additional motivation. Some people find that putting money at risk for their commitments creates powerful incentive for follow-through. You could commit to donating a significant amount to a charity you oppose if you fail to meet your obligations, or pay a fee to your accountability partner. But external accountability is most effective when paired with internal accountability systems. Track your own progress independently of what you report to others. Keep records of what you accomplish each day, what obstacles you face, and how you feel about your progress. Create visual progress charts. Track progress towards long-term goals using charts or graphs. Visual representation of progress can motivate and provide instant gratification. Charts, journals, or apps that track your daily actions create a form of accountability to your future self. Join or create groups focused on action and achievement. Online communities, local meetups, or professional organizations can provide ongoing accountability and encouragement. Being part of a culture that values consistent effort makes individual action feel more natural and sustainable. Consider working in public spaces where others can observe your behavior. The mild social pressure of being seen by strangers can be enough to maintain focus and avoid procrastination. Coffee shops, libraries, and co-working spaces leverage this principle naturally. The goal of accountability isn't to create shame or punishment for imperfection. It's to create external structure that supports internal motivation. The best accountability systems celebrate progress while maintaining honest assessment of where improvement is needed. Chapter 19. Dealing with setbacks and maintaining momentum. Setbacks are inevitable in any effort to overcome procrastination. The question isn't whether you'll have days when you fall back into old patterns. It's how quickly you'll recognize what's happening and return to productive action. Practice self-compassion. Forgive yourself and refocus instead of spiraling into guilt. The most destructive response to a procrastination setback is the "what the hell" effect, the tendency to give up entirely after a single failure. You miss one day of your new routine and conclude that you lack the discipline for consistent action. You procrastinate on an important deadline and decide you're simply not capable of better time management. This black and white thinking turns temporary setbacks into permanent failures. People who can acknowledge their mistakes or other personal failings and then forgive themselves for it are less likely to procrastinate. Self-compassion isn't about lowering standards. It's about maintaining the emotional resilience necessary for continued effort. When you notice you've fallen into procrastination patterns, respond with curiosity rather than criticism. What triggered the avoidance? What emotions were you trying to escape? What changes in your environment, energy, or stress levels might have contributed? Understanding the cause helps you prevent similar setbacks in the future. Ask yourself these questions to help find out what is contributing to your procrastination. What thoughts are contributing to such feelings? For example, if you are feeling anxious, it would be a good idea to explore the deeper layers of your thoughts and emotions regarding why you are feeling anxious. Get back on track immediately, rather than waiting for the perfect time to restart. If you missed your morning routine, don't wait until next Monday. Restart that afternoon. If you procrastinated all week, don't wait until next month. Begin again the next day. The longer you wait to restart, the more difficult restarting becomes. Have a specific protocol for getting back on track after setbacks. This might include reviewing your goals, simplifying your next actions, or recommitting to your implementation intentions. Having a predetermined response eliminates the need to figure out what to do while you're feeling discouraged. Use setbacks as opportunities to strengthen your systems. Each episode of Procrastination reveals weaknesses in your environment, planning, or mindset. Instead of seeing these as evidence of personal failure, see them as data about what needs to be adjusted. Maintain perspective about the overall trend. One day of procrastination doesn't erase weeks of consistent action. 1 week of struggling doesn't negate months of progress. Focus on the long-term pattern rather than individual failures. Build buffer zones into your planning. If you have a deadline in 2 weeks, plan to finish in 10 days. This gives you room for unexpected obstacles or temporary setbacks without missing important commitments. The person who builds slack into their schedule can recover from setbacks without catastrophic consequences. Celebrate your recovery as much as your initial progress. The ability to bounce back from setbacks is a skill that improves with practice. Each time you successfully return to productive action after a period of procrastination, you're building resilience and proving to yourself that setbacks are temporary. Chapter 20: Advanced Strategies for Complex Projects. Large, complex projects present unique challenges that simple anti-procrastination techniques can't address. When a project spans months or years, when it requires learning new skills, when it involves multiple stakeholders, standard approaches like the 2-minute rule or Pomodoro technique need to be supplemented with more sophisticated strategies. Break complex projects into phases with distinct outcomes. Instead of thinking about writing a book, think about completing the research phase, then the outline phase, then the first draft phase. Each phase should have its own deadline and success criteria. This creates multiple completion experiences rather than one distant goal. Set so-called SMART goals and/or to prepare those students with specific strategies to resist their temptations. SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, work well for individual phases of larger projects. Each phase should be specific enough to know exactly what done looks like, measurable enough to track progress, achievable enough to maintain motivation, relevant enough to matter, and time-bound enough to create urgency. Create project documentation that reduces cognitive load. Complex projects involve too many details to hold in memory simultaneously. Maintain written records of decisions made, lessons learned, resources discovered, and next actions identified. This external memory system prevents you from having to reconstruct your thinking each time you return to the work. Establish regular project review sessions. Weekly or monthly reviews help you maintain perspective on overall progress while identifying emerging obstacles before they become crises. These reviews should assess what's working well, what needs adjustment, and what support or resources might be needed. Plan for skill development within the project timeline. Complex projects often require learning new capabilities as you progress. Instead of assuming you'll figure things out as you go, identify skill gaps early and allocate time for learning. This prevents the project from stalling when you encounter tasks beyond your current ability. Implementation intentions involve forming if-then rules that can be targeted at specific temptations. For complex projects, create implementation intentions for common obstacles. If I feel overwhelmed by the scope of this project, then I will focus only on the next week's work. Or, if I discover that my timeline is unrealistic, then I will immediately revise the schedule rather than hoping to catch up later. Build in celebration milestones throughout the project. Waiting until final completion to acknowledge progress makes long projects feel endless. Create smaller victories along the way, completing research, finishing a major section, reaching halfway, or solving a difficult problem. These celebrations maintain motivation and mark meaningful progress. Consider the project's relationship to your other commitments. Complex projects often fail not because of poor project management, but because they compete unsuccessfully with other priorities. Be realistic about how much attention you can sustainably give to a long-term project while meeting your other responsibilities. Develop contingency plans for common setbacks. What will you do if you fall behind schedule? How will you handle unexpected complications? What support will you seek if you lose motivation? Having predetermined responses to likely challenges prevents temporary setbacks from derailing the entire effort. The person who successfully completes complex projects isn't necessarily the most talented or motivated. They're the person who treats project management as a skill worthy of deliberate practice and continuous improvement. Chapter 21: Creating Systems for Long-Term Success. The ultimate goal isn't just to overcome procrastination temporarily, it's to build systems that make consistent actions sustainable for years. Small, consistent changes create momentum, and over time, you build an identity of someone who takes action. This requires thinking beyond individual techniques to the broader architecture of how you organize your life. Design your default behaviors to support action rather than avoidance. Your defaults are what happen when you don't make a conscious choice. If your default response to free time is scrolling social media, you'll procrastinate unless you actively decide otherwise. If your default response to feeling overwhelmed is taking a walk, you'll build resilience automatically. Digital minimalism is a philosophy that advocates for a mindful and intentional approach to technology use, emphasizing the elimination of non-essential digital distractions in favor of activities that add value and meaning to one's life. Your relationship with technology profoundly affects your ability to maintain focus and take sustained action. Create intentional boundaries around when, where, and how you engage with digital tools. Establish rhythms rather than rigid schedules. Rhythms are patterns that adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining core structure. You might have a rhythm of doing your most important work in the morning, regardless of what that work is or exactly when you start. You might have a rhythm of weekly planning, regardless of which day you do it or how formal the process is. Digital wellness routine. Incorporate digital well-being practices into your daily routine, such as setting digital curfews, engaging in regular digital declutter sessions, and prioritizing offline activities. Regular maintenance of your digital environment prevents the accumulation of distractions and decision fatigue that erode your capacity for focused work. Build systems for continuous learning and adaptation. What works for you now may not work as your life circumstances change. Create regular times to assess what's working well, what needs adjustment, and what new approaches you want to try. This meta-system prevents you from getting stuck with outdated methods. Develop multiple pathways to the same outcomes. If your primary system for staying focused is working in a quiet home office, what will you do when you travel? If your main motivation comes from external deadlines, how will you handle self-directed projects? Redundancy creates resilience. Celebrate progress. Reinforce action with rewards. Build celebration and acknowledgement into your systems rather than treating them as occasional extras. Regular recognition of progress maintains motivation and creates positive associations with sustained effort. Create systems that grow stronger with use, rather than wearing out. Many productivity systems become more burdensome over time, as they accumulate complexity and exceptions. Design simple systems that become more automatic and natural with repetition. Think in decades, not days. The habits and systems you build now will compound over years. Small daily improvements in your ability to take action will create dramatic long-term differences in what you're able to accomplish. The person who improves their anti-procrastination systems by just 1% each month will be dramatically more capable after a year. Your goal is to become the type of person for whom consistent action feels natural rather than forced. This transformation happens gradually through the accumulation of many small choices, each one either reinforcing your identity as someone who takes action or someone who avoids action. The systems you build today determine not just what you'll accomplish tomorrow, but who you'll become over time. Choose systems that reflect the person you want to be, and let those systems shape you into that person through daily practice. Conclusion: from procrastination to unstoppable action. You now understand what most people never realize. Procrastination isn't a character flaw or moral failing. It's a neurological response to discomfort, amplified by an environment designed to fragment your attention and reward instant gratification. Your struggle with procrastination doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But understanding the problem is only the beginning. The difference between those who overcome procrastination and those who remain trapped by it isn't knowledge, it's application. You can read every book about productivity and still procrastinate if you don't implement what you learn. You can understand every psychological principle and still avoid action if you don't practice changing your responses. The strategies in this guide work, but only if you use them. Start with one technique rather than trying to implement everything at once. Choose the approach that resonates most strongly with your current situation and commit to practicing it consistently for at least 2 weeks before adding additional methods. Remember that progress isn't linear. You'll have setbacks, difficult days, and moments when old patterns reassert themselves. This doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. The difference between those who ultimately succeed and those who give up isn't the absence of setbacks but the speed of recovery from them. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It's a universal human struggle with emotions, motivation, and decision-making, but it doesn't have to control your life. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you strengthen the neural pathways that make future action easier. Every time you start when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that feelings don't control your behavior. The person who acts despite imperfect conditions, insufficient motivation, and unclear outcomes develops a strength that external circumstances cannot touch. That person becomes unstoppable, not because they never feel resistance, but because they've learnt to act in spite of resistance. You have everything you need to break free from procrastination. You understand how your brain creates the urge to delay. You know how to design your environment to support action. You have specific techniques for overcoming common obstacles. You have systems for maintaining momentum over time. What you do with this knowledge is up to you. You can read this guide and feel temporarily motivated, then return to old patterns when the feeling fades. Or you can choose one strategy, implement it immediately, and begin building the identity of someone who takes action regardless of how they feel. The choice is yours. The time is now. The person you want to become is waiting for you to begin. Take action, not tomorrow, not when you feel more prepared, not when conditions are perfect. Now, your future self is counting on what you choose to do next. Make them proud. Remember to like and subscribe for more content that helps you take control of your life and build the habits that create lasting success. Your journey from procrastination to unstoppable action starts with a single step, and that step starts right now.